The question asks us for the purpose of the N.I.C.E organization. That's the first initial inquiry. And I'd like to state that I believe the purpose of the N.I.C.E organization was to elevate man, was to allow man to assume this status, this almost omniscient, godlike status that we can achieve all that is possible. We can master science or use science to master the universe. That with our ability, with our intellect, there nothing is impossible. And that there's a certain group of people, particularly the N.I.C.E organization, that should take over society and that will lead society to where it should go according to these corrupt leaders. So the purpose of N.I.C.E is to gratify the power-driven desires of a few corrupt men, but also N.I.C.E is a very demonic organization. It's blatantly satanic, and oracles like the head of the criminal that they worship and they ask advice from. That's one example of the fact that the N.I.C.E organization calls upon magic and mystical and strange and evil things in order to get their agenda accomplished. So the N.I.C.E is an organization filled with demonism and barbarism. However, its purpose seems rather scientific. It's to control society, to make everyone predictable, and to rid society of the inorganic, and also elevate man to a godlike status, or some man, in that fact, to a godlike status. Now let's move on to the individual descriptions. Now these three men, let me pull up their names real quickly. These three men are Feverstone, Strake, and Philostrato. These three men each describe what they believe to be the purpose of N.I.C.E. And the question asks, what do these descriptions have in common? The first thing they all have in common is the ridding of what is organic and the medicinal solution to the problem of man and the problem of science and the problem of nature. These individuals essentially believe that nature is a problem, that all animals and plants need to be eradicated and man is to be sustained on a strictly chemical basis. And that if this is achieved, then man will be eventually controllable and docile and predictable and also sustainable. So these three men, although their end result is slightly different and slightly less extreme in some cases and more extreme in other cases, these three descriptions have in common the ridding of the organic with what is inorganic, or chemical, or scientific, what have you. Now let's look into those individual descriptions and describe them real quickly. Feverstone discusses them on page 40 that we need to solve the problem of man. And he says that we do this by ultimately by using biochemical conditioning. So Feverstone wants to rid man of his unpredictable mind, of his sin nature, some would say, of his creativity, of his unpredictability. Feverstone wants to make men like robots, if you will, and to have the N.I.C.E organization controlling them like one controls a robot from a control panel. And let's move on to the next description, which is, I believe the man's name is a little more complicated. Philostrato, yes. Philostrato's description is a little more extreme. He states that organic life has harmed the mind. He thinks that what is natural is an evil. So he looks upon plants, animals, and natural scientific elements as harmful and antagonistic towards the purpose of humanity. So he says, of course, get rid of all that, and then throw sex away, and the end goal is to make man governable, as he says in page 170. So Philostrato's goal is to make man governable and docile, which is very similar to Feverstone's goal. So we see here a very strict parallel. Moving on to Strake's goal. Now Strake eventually offers ransom the unspeakable glory, quote, of being present at the creation of God Almighty. So that's on page 176. Strake believes that by using this clinical scientific resolution and by applying this potion, if you will, to society, we will rid society of all evils and eventually come to a place where man is governable and where one man assumes a position of God and is immortal and lives forever, and thus it'll be the greatest creation in the history of man. And so Strayek believes in a much more extreme version of co his co N.I.C.E employees, if you will. He believes in a more extreme version of their ideas. Now, as far as any organizations that resemble N.I.C.E, the first one that pops into my head is, of course, Nazism and Stalinism. Those are not organizations, more so ideologies. But I don't really see any organizations in our society now that mirror the N.I.C.E organization. So that's my ultimate answer for that. However, I'm up to debate on that issue. So we see that in the end, the purpose of N.I.C.E is to eradicate what is natural, replace it with what is scientific and unnatural. And we see that varying descriptions of these three men, and ultimately, beginning with Feverstone's description, we arrive at different levels of intensity. Feverstone is a level of mild intensity. Philostrato's description of the purpose of N.I.C.E is a medium level of intensity, and then Strayek's description of N.I.C.E is a very potent and very high level of intensity.